would like to start a little bit with talking about neurolanguage coaching, what it is, and then moving into the space of brain-friendly grammar. Just out of curiosity, and if you can find your emojis, how many of you like grammar? Orshi, is that a look of horror? Shock? Dina, yes, you like it. Lonnie, yes, you like it. You know, I think it's interesting because apparently linguists should be very good at mathematics, because the logical, analytical side of thinking and, you know, language is on the left hemisphere predominantly. So is sort of that mathematical, analytical. So theoretically, we should be good at logical, analytical. Now, my feeling is that they don't teach it in the right way at school. And because they turn us off from a young age, that's it for the rest of our lives, until you meet somebody who is able to turn on that beautiful curiosity light of how languages come together. Because it's curious how different languages have different systems and different ways of putting the words and bringing them together. And it really is quite a beautiful journey into learning a language. And that's what we want our learners to feel, that curiosity. Once you've got the curiosity, you know that then you've got the dopamine. Once you've got the dopamine, you know that they're making lots and lots of connections per second. And that's what we want as well. So brain-friendly grammar, how do we make it friendly? Well, neurolanguage coaching is about bringing in coaching on the one side and bringing in the neuroscience on the other side. And if we look at coaching today, you know, when I started this, 2012, 2013, bringing coaching into the teaching world, there were a lot of raised eyebrows, a lot of sort of criticisms, a lot of what are you doing, a lot of curiosity. Now, I think we are witnessing the boom of coaching and education. And we're seeing the boom of language coaches. It's starting now. Everybody wants to be a language coach. Everybody is a language coach. What is coaching today? Well, there are different types of coaching, and predominantly we know about life coaching and business coaching, executive coaching. That started in the 1970s. The original word, as Orsi well knows, comes from the Hungarian. I think it's koci, yes? The koci is the word?
Kochi.
Kochi, thank you. Which is very similar to the Spanish coche. Very similar. So it comes from the Hungarian. In the 15th, 16th century, it was used as a private tutor. 19th century then penetrated the sports world, sports coaches. But then in the 1970s, we saw the development of life coaching, predominantly from the consulting world. Two consultants, a financial consultant, Sir John Whitmore, another business consultant, in different directions started to develop the GROW model. And this financial consultant started to develop this type of conversation coming into this sort of pattern of soundboarding, helping people by reflecting, by mirroring, by getting them to find their solutions. And that's how life coaching was really born in the 1970s. Now, it's not about giving advice, and this is where people get very confused with coaching. It's not about giving advice. It is about getting the coachee to find their own path, their own solutions, their own way forward. You know, in many ways, we could bridge back to Socrates, and we could bridge back to Socratic thinking, where the idea is to get the other person to think, to speak, to ask them questions that provoke. And I would say that's the heart of coaching even today. Now, how do we bridge that into teaching? Because obviously teaching, you are giving information. And this is where I always think there's a little bit of a dichotomy here. How do I sit in the shoes of a coach, provoke, get them to find the answers? But how do I give my knowledge to help them to learn? And we'll come to that a little bit later. Now, one of the things that I strongly follow is non-directive coaching, which has different perspectives. Non-directive means not telling you what to do, but from my side, it also means how we can soften the way that we communicate. May I ask you, how about? What do you think if? So I'm moving away from the imperatives, and we'll talk about that later as well. So coaching is not therapy. It's not psychotherapy. I'm not there to sort out your problems. I mean, personal problems, life problems, business problems. That would take it into life coaching, business coaching, executive coaching. Now, if we look at this from a language coaching perspective, if there is something that is blocking or stopping you from learning or producing, speaking, or being fluent, then we need to address it. And there we would use coaching conversations, but we never go into that feeling of therapy. I strongly recommend that we have those differences. And as a professional life coach, you really have to know your limits, and you have to be able to say to your clients, this is not in my domain. I need you to seek another professional. So that's what coaching is. And when we look at the elements of coaching, if we really break this down, we're looking at the structure of a process. Coaching has a definite structure: setting goals, setting actions, goal review. It also has the spirit of coaching. So the spirit of the sports coach, empowering, but not directing. And getting them to unleash their potential. I want you to go beyond your limits, getting to your goals. The impact on the coachee's autonomy, self-regulated learning processes. And honestly, the research demonstrates that there is more success when people are self-regulating. And also the motivation and commitment soar. They really become more motivated because they're seeing the success. Buongiorno Alessandro, che bello vederti. Ciao.
Buongiorno, mi scuso per il ritardo.
Sempre scusato, sempre benvenuto. Great to see you. Coach impact, neutral, non-judgmental. This is the beauty of coaching, when you're sitting with someone with no judgment. I was with a group of school teachers a couple of weeks ago from Santander. And I think this is one of the greatest gifts that teachers can bring to children as well. This feeling of no judgment. This feeling of, it's okay, don't worry. If you get it wrong, let me help you. How can I help you? That feeling of compassion, the compassionate conversation today is essential. It's key. And we're soundboarding, we're reflecting, and we are the accountability partner. When you've got a coach, you are accountable to somebody. They're not there with the whip, but they're there to really check in with you. How are you doing? What's happening? How can I help? What's stopping you? What's the reason you haven't done it this week? What could make you do it this week? So that feeling of accountability is huge. And I strongly recommend, if any of you have never, ever had any life coaching, try it out. Try it out for yourselves. See what it feels like to sit in the shoes of a coachee and go through that process. So what about coaching and education? Well, do you know what? Actually, it's been around for over 25 years. And when you look at the research, there is loads of research out there about coaching and education. However, it's come in mostly coaching teachers. So it's mostly been about leadership, training in schools, staff coaching, helping teachers to address certain ways in the classroom or what's happened, even for students to give feedback, parents to give parent questions, improving student well-being, teacher well-being. What we are doing is different. We are integrating the coaching approach into the way that we teach. So it's not about getting a teacher, sitting with the teacher and coaching the teacher around the problems. It's about transforming the teacher, embodying the persona of a coach. That's what we are doing, and that's different. Proven impact of coaching. Well, you know, this is my most favorite research from 2022, very recent. Gorka is here. He's a neighbor of mine in Catalonia, in Gerona. And very beautifully, he demonstrates with this research that non-directive coaching actually increases the frequency of creative insights and creative ideas. And that's what happens when you get people in the right brain state and they're in that relaxed flow. Different parts of the brain start connecting. It's almost like the lower regions of the brain start connecting and coming out to play because this prefrontal cortex is quiet. You know, when you go in a flow state, when you're happily just merrily doing something for hours and hours and hours, you're in love with it, you're passionate, you lose time. That's when you start to have insights, aha moments, connections. And this is the proof that non-directive coaching provokes those states. This is just a little bit of research from 2007 on educational coaching. This was when they had a coaching and mentoring program for teaching staff. This is what I mean, that coaching and education was mostly for coaching and mentoring teachers. And this was the result. So yes, great results, but slightly different to what we do. And that's from 2007, by the way. This one's from 2014, again, educational coaching for principals, teachers, superintendents, and the proof that it results in long-lasting change. So coaching is impacting, no matter what level, no matter what combination, it really does have an impact. So how can it enhance teaching? Well, I do think, and I think you'll all agree, especially if you've got children at school, we've got very stressed teachers. Those teachers in Santander were extremely stressed. And I'm even going to say distressed because they're not connecting to the learners. And I think this is partly from the pandemic, which we now don't even talk about. I think we seem to have forgotten it. We've gone into this, I don't know, oblivion of, did it really exist? I think we need to talk about it a lot more because the consequences are rife. So we've got a lot of changes in our brains. We've got a lot of teachers who are not connecting with the learners because they've changed. They're not able to communicate on the same levels. And especially those kids who were in the pandemic at the ages of 10 to 12, 10 to 13. Now they are 14, 15, 16, 17. Those ages are really, really finding it hard to connect in and communicate. How can we help them? A lot of teachers are battling this curriculum that is imposed on them, which we don't want because it doesn't work most of the time. And a lot of them are overworked with admin and not in the joy of learning and teaching, because that's what they're there for, not to sit pushing paperwork. The beautiful thing is that in spite of all of that, you, the teachers, are actually changing. You are adapting. You are intuitively doing it. And what we want is that you become intuitive and conscious of it. Consciousness is the key in today's world. The more conscious you become of everything that comes out of your mouth when you're in a learning, teaching environment, the more impact you're going to have. Now, I've started working with a brilliant gentleman. Over the last year, I take on very select clients. And this particular client is a brilliant brain. He's actually a nuclear medical technician. You can imagine what type of brain this gentleman has. He has very good English, but it's almost like there's a disconnect between his awareness and his production of the language, and he wants to embody the language. After 2 sessions, the metacognition that he is now coming into, his awareness, his reflections, his putting things in the right place, it's incredible. Just after 2 sessions, he has gone from here to up here, and his motivation, his curiosity is phenomenal. That's the impact that we want. And coaching questions, coaching approach, it's all about bringing the awareness and the metacognition. And when we change our patterns of communication, it has an impact. Now, we know that coaching actually guarantees psychological safety. And that's actually one of the ICF competences, this maintaining that psychological trust, safety. From the research, we know that mathematics causes the anxiety, stress, social pain. I would suggest that language for some people is even worse than mathematics. So if you take this as the basis, where on earth is language anxiety? Might be threefold. So we have to pay attention how we speak to our learners. It's interesting as well, and I'm going to just mention, a few weeks ago, we had a webinar on the perfect learning state. And I was talking about the recent research, which is showing synchrony of brains. Brain waves are like pulsating flashes of neurons firing up in our brains when we're thinking or doing something. And we now have the research demonstrating that actually teachers and learners, there is this synchrony. And if you can achieve that synchrony, there seems to be more impact in the learning. Now, I actually think this comes from the way we talk, the way we communicate. And if you can get into that pattern of communication that's very gentle, non-judgmental, very much coming into the permission. You know, permission has a double edge to it. When I ask you, my learner, may we move on and do this now? The way I ask is keeping you calm. I'm not saying, right, let's do this, move on to page 10, do this now. It's not a command. But the second thing is, it's opening the door to your learner autonomy. Because you could turn around and say to me, Rachel, could we do something else? I've had enough. Please, could we move on to something else? So by asking you permission, may we move on and do this now, you could actually say no. And I've had learners do that. And by the way, when I'm a learner, I do that too. If I've had enough of something, I tell my coach, no, I've had enough of this. Please, let's do something different. Fine. This is your learning process. So the way we communicate is key. I just need to say hello to Agatha. Agatha. Are you in Bali?
Hello, beautiful Rachel. Yeah, I'm in a little cafe here in Bali, downtown, Ubud.
We're so jealous. We want to be with you. We'll be on the next plane.
Oh my God, Rachel, these opportunities to see you are just priceless. I've already enrolled in another upcoming webinar of yours. Thank you so much for doing this. I so appreciate seeing you and listening to you. It's always just so incredible. Mwah. Thank you so much. Lots of love to you and everyone. Lots of love.
Thank you to all of you for being here on a Sunday morning with your coffee. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so changing the pattern of communication also means that we're changing learning conversations. Now, we're moving into adding the neuroscience. I promise we will get to brain-friendly grammar at some point today. No two brains are the same. Here, this is where we come into the greatest respect for neurodiversity. I think now more than ever before in our lives as teachers and educators, we really have to take on board that every single... Well, everybody, we had a bit of a breakdown there. Goodness, sorry about that.
We were having a little party without you. I'm kidding.
With pleasure, with pleasure. No idea what happened there. The internet just totally blasted out. So let's go back to neuroplasticity. Just when I was talking about changing the brain and how we can all change our brains and do different things in life, they took us off. Okay, there we go. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Sorry about that. I think this is one of the greatest messages for all of us. Neuroplasticity means that we can change the brain. The brain is not static. It changes throughout life. And it means changes in neural pathways. Now, can we just get serious about this topic a minute? Because we've known about neuroplasticity since the 1970s. That's when we first started changing this theory that the brain is static. The brain is plastic, which means we can learn lifelong. We have proof. There was research in an old people's home, people in their 80s, their 90s. The day before they died, they had made new neural connections. So we can do this up until the day we die. Now, the problem is, since the 1970s, that's 55 years ago nearly, everybody. How are we living this? I am constantly still hearing people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, I'm getting old. I refuse to accept this because I'm older than that. That's the major reason why I refuse to accept it. So it really is the question, what are we doing to change our brains? What are you doing? Are you learning something new? Are you doing something different? Do you get your toothbrush with the left hand instead of the right hand? Do you come out of the bed on the right side instead of the left side? What can you do every day to challenge your brain to new things? I confess, I love boxing. And actually, I've been a couple of years that I haven't been boxing. And now I've started again in the last couple of weeks. And it's quite interesting that when you start something again, there's a lot of muscle memory, a lot of things happening. But yes, you kind of have to get back in it. And, I'm determined to start coming back into doing new things. I also, on my list, I want to get my Russian into some sort of good level, but I also want to get into Greek. This year, Greek is coming in. So what's on your list? What's on your list to challenge your brain? How can you challenge your learners? If you have learners who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, how can you help them to understand you can learn? Might be different the way that you learn. We might need to find what's going to work for you, because as we get older, our brain gets more clever, gets more selective. You need things to be more relevant, because if not, the brain's going to say, whoa, that's a waste of time. Why do I need to learn that? So definitely, this topic needs to be embodied in us. By the way, can I say this is also a problem of the systems? Because we're telling kids that at the age of 17, 18, you should know what you want to do for the rest of your life. No. The new message now is you can start off with something in your 20s, you can go back to university, you can do something else, and all through your life, you could have 5 professions. By the way, did any of you see that book from the Mexican astronaut? I think his name's Jose Martinez. He, from a very young age, was kind of moving schools, all because his father was one of these fruit pickers. And they could see that he was a really bright kid. So they sort of said, you know, you need to settle the kid down because then he can get into really learning. When they settled him down, he then got much better with his English, his Spanish, his grades went up. He then he worked for the US government. He was one of the first in the team to create the machinery for breast screening. But from being a kid, he wanted to be an astronaut. I think from the age of 10, 11, he wanted to be an astronaut. He was refused by NASA 11 times. 11 times. He kept going back. He kept going back. He kept going back until the 12th time he was chosen. And now he's living his dream as an astronaut, but he's done various things through his life. And I think these stories are really important for kids to know. You can change and do different things. I have a girlfriend who started off doing theology, religion at university. Late 20s, she became a lawyer. I met her at university in her 40s. She wanted to become a doctor. And now she's a doctor. Those are the examples of life that we need now for kids. That's the first thing we need to change in the system. Second thing we need to change in the system, retirement. The message about retiring and stopping is wrong. The message should be recalibrating life. Recalibrating into something you want to do at this time in your life. So how about we change retirement for recalibrate? I've gone on a little bit about neuroplasticity because I really, really want to get that message home. You know, we are such incredible beings and we don't fully, I think we don't fully accept just how awesome we are. Now, learning is firing, wiring, storing. That's learning. You're firing neural networks. Those neural networks are connecting, and then they're going into the memorization, storage. And that's what we want when we're learning. Now, very important when you're learning is the state of the emotional brain. If the emotional brain is not in the right state, you are not going to learn. If you've got a learner in fight or flight, they're not going to learn. The areas that we need, hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, are not fully functioning. It's very important that we pay attention to the triggers. As a neurolanguage coach, we are really trained to recognize the different emotional triggers that may arise, because there may be many. And we detect them from what we're hearing and what we're sensing. You develop that sense. And I encourage all of you, talk to your learners about the brain, talk to them about fight or flight, take them through what's happening. Even grown men, sit them down, take them through, this is what's happening in the brain. I had one 50-something-year-old with stuttering in meetings, and literally, may I share with you about the brain? This is what happens when you go in survival mode. These are the areas shutting down. That's the reason that the language is not flowing. Is that what's happening to you? And he actually thanked me and said, Rachel, thank you. That's the first time anybody's explained it to me. And yes, that's exactly what's happening. Fine. Let's troubleshoot how to get you beyond it. You know, one of the major missions for our brain is to understand. life, the universe, what's happening to me. And as soon as you tell the brain, this is what's happening, and the brain understands, the brain becomes calm. Ah, now I understand it. So talk to them about it. We all think we're the only ones in the world having panic attacks, having these moments of emotional triggers. We're not. Everybody on earth has them. We're human. And by the way, in an emergency, thank God, because it keeps us alive. So talk to them about the brain, recognize things that maybe they're nervous about, like terminology. So when you go into grammar, if you start going into the grammar terms and you see they're kind of going into that, let me give you examples only. Or how would you like to call this part of the grammar? I had one Italian who always got confused adjectives and adverbs and nervous with it. Oh, I never remember which is which. Okay, how can we call them? Let's call them something so that you don't get nervous, but you know what I mean. So then he said, okay, a being and a doing. Brilliant. So let's look for the being word. Let's look for the doing word. And so that then got him calm. By the way, he was even confusing them in Italian. So it was coming from his native language. And constant check-ins, you know, how are you? How are you doing? How are you feeling? How can I help? That compassion coming in. And the secret to everything that we do is bite-sized chunks. Now, this is very, very important for the grammar as well. It's very important to break down that information. Now, already in the 1950s, we had Miller sort of talking about the magic number 7. How when we break things down, we've kind of got that middle way, which is the magic number. But it really is about chunking into smaller pieces of information. When you think about language learning, you know, as soon as somebody says, oh, I want to learn, for example, me, I want to learn Greek. If I really think about that, my brain goes, oh my God, there's so much to learn. So how can I get that into smaller? Okay, I'm going to start here. That's my first goal. Then I'm moving to this, then we'll go to there. And how can I build in the stepping stones? And as soon as I do that, my brain starts thinking, okay, this is doable. I've got to take it bit by bit. It calms the brain down. If ever you have a big problem in life or any problem you have, see how you can break it down. What's my first step? What could I do after that? What could I do after that? And you'll see that the problem starts to get calmer in your mind. So everything that we do in neurolanguage coaching is about breaking the grammar down, breaking functional language down, analyzing, breaking it down, step by step, and then building them up into the language. And promoting learner autonomy. This is about them learning. You know, one of the greatest quotes from the neuroscience comes from a neuroscientist called Terence Doyle. And he always comes to mind for me when I look at this. The person doing it learns it. The person doing it learns it. We are so used to doing it for them. We've had centuries of sit down, shut up, and let me talk at you. And you learn it that way. What we are doing now is we're stepping back, very much like Socrates, biting our lip. We want you to do it. Obviously, we have to learn to let go. We have to learn to get them doing it more. And by the way, this is where I would also say that we're really going to sit and co-create materials with them. When you are sitting with your learner, there is no need for photocopies, materials, unless they want to analyze a text, look at an article or something, fine. But if you are in that process of grammar or something else, to start with, we should be creating the materials with them, or they should be creating them with us, because that's going to help them to make it stick much more. I confess, 20 years ago, when I was running in and out of the companies with all of my clients, I think I was called the photocopy queen. I had photocopy upon photocopy upon photocopy. I think I broke the photocopier in those years. Honestly, now I would say, no, no, no. Because the truth of the matter is, I would give them the photocopy, we'd kind of play with it, and then it would be lost forever. Now, looking back, I realize, well, I ask myself, how effective was my teaching back then, really? How much did they learn? My teaching would have been very effective, yes. How much did they learn? That's the question. And this is the question we have to ask ourselves. It's not about us being what we are. It's about how much do they learn from that moment with us. That's the measuring stick. That's the truth. The more you do it with them, the more you get them to do it, the more they are going to learn. And right back from the 70s, as I said earlier, we see that when learners are self-regulating, when they're doing it by themselves, it has much more effect. They really are learning better. So how does the brain like to learn? Well, one of the aspects is scaffolding, 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 scaffolding. Our brain is such an amazing connection machine. It's incredible when you think of all those millions of neurons and neural networks and how they are intricately connecting in. No computer on earth can match the brain yet. I think I need to put in the yet just in case. Now, scaffolding, very important in language learning. We have the research from 2016 demonstrating that when we learn a new language, our brain is going to the native mother tongue grammar structures first. Naturally, our brain is going to the native areas to see if it can scaffold. How many of you would agree? I actually think 90% of the time, Ina, I know that you agree with me. 90% of the time, the mistakes that people make are native interference. Yeah. When you really, really think about it, native interference is driving those errors. Some of you know my classic example of this. My classic example is the Latin brain will say it depends of. The Slav brain will say it depends from. And neither of them are right. For me, that's a beautiful example of native interference. Now, my suggestion here is that you, whenever you hear your learner with a mistake like that, you ask them, where does that mistake come from? Even if you know it, ask them to talk it through with you. Where does that mistake come from? Okay, in my native, it's this. Oh, okay, so I'm hearing in your native, you say depend, and you use the preposition of, they. May I share with you in English, it's not that preposition, it's a different one. So we need to bring in the alarm bells. And by the way, I need to understand, does this exist in your language? So for many languages, the continuous tenses don't exist. Present perfect doesn't exist. Articles don't exist. If I know that, I know that you've got nothing to scaffold from, like a baby's brain. So instead of trying to hammer you with articles that just don't exist in your brain, I'm going to calm you down first. I'm going to say, look, this particular grammar area doesn't exist for you. It's going to be a little bit like a little baby's brain learning this for the first time. So we need to get you very clear on when we use it, what it is, how I can explain it to you. Maybe we can bring in some similarities to your language, because I know that in your language, you might use the demonstrative more, this, instead of the. So what we'll do is we'll build you up with the article, and we'll need to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it so that your brain, like a baby's brain, repeats and repeats and repeats to create those neural connections. And just by talking your learner through that, it's going to calm them down. Scaffolding is key. And the more you can provoke those connections, and as a neurolanguage coach, we really are what I call provocateur par excellence. Now, can I just say, I want to clarify, I'm not saying that you should be talking native all the time in the session. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you should be asking provocative questions about the native. That's different. And whenever we do this in the grammar conversation, which I'm going to show you in a minute, you'll see that we are constantly provoking. So we have to help the learner to relate to the language, coach about negative beliefs, make it real, make it personal, contextualize, even talk about the learning plateau. You know, how we learn is important, and helping them to understand the process is going to help them to understand the stages of learning. And you'll see when we come into the grammar conversations, we really want them to make it real and personal. And we want them to understand conscious and subconscious learning, explicit and implicit learning. Lonnie, by the way, you asked me about that research the other day. There it is. The vast majority of learning is taken in at the subconscious level. Yeah, you've got the references there. Now, you know, explicit learning is very much getting this sort of feeling of the rules, talk them through with me. It's very much prefrontal cortex learning, declarative memories. So there we're discussing learning theory. We're really getting that frontal lobe engaged. Implicit learning is procedural memory. It's coming into skills, subconscious input, even getting them into the flow. And it's important to understand those different types of learning. When we are initially coming into grammar, we want them in that explicit. We want them into that information, data, theory, discussing, analyzing, logically rationalizing. That's what we want to start with. Finally, everybody, we're coming to the question of brain-friendly grammar. So what we've done is we've warmed you up a little bit, because neurolanguage coaching brings in the coaching, it brings in the neuroscience. Everything that we do in neurolanguage coaching has a reason. The way we communicate, the way we break it down, the way we connect in, the way we provoke, scaffolding, everything. Now, the grammar, the brain-friendly grammar conversations have 2 steps. The first step is breaking down the grammar area. The second step is going into a flowing coaching conversation with the coaching model that I've created, PQC. The objectives of this conversation are really to make sure you've got their brain where you want it to go. Let me give you another of my confessions. 20 years ago, when I was working with my clients, I'd go into a session thinking, okay, today we're going to do modals. And we'd start off with modals, and then we'd go off on a tangent this way, and we'd go off on a tangent this way, and then we'd go somewhere else and somewhere else. And by the time I'd finished, I'd 1 hour had gone and I'd come out thinking, oh, we didn't get very far with modals today. And I think if we're all honest, many, many times our sessions run away with us. Now, when you come into these types of conversations, we are razor sharp with the focus. We already know the goals that the client wants. So, for example, my new client, the one that's done the 2 sessions with me, wanted to get very clear on present simple, present continuous. So we were very focused in on getting that done. Now, this conversation, you are the one, I always say, you are the conductor of their brain orchestra. You are conducting that process. So we've got their attention and focus where we want it. We want to really provoke them to think, provoke them to make connections. And we really want them, if they know it, to consolidate it. If they don't know it, I want them to get it instantly. And believe me, in these conversations, people do get grammar instantly. Orshi, I know you said you've had some moments like that, yes? With your learners? Yes. Yes. It works. It really does. Orshi, did you want to come on?
Thank you.
1 second.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the thing is that I wanted to challenge myself and everything you have taught me about this. And my challenge was to teach Hungarians how to use present perfect. Because that's, I think, the greatest challenge we have, because we don't know that. And people can connect to this, so they don't have this concept. And I tried your system with every single student I have. And I can tell you that all of them master present perfect in that way, that there are no questions anymore. So I keep doing this in every single grammar question we have. And it really works. And even for advanced learners, that's brilliant for them, because they have much more confidence than after. They have the answer given by themselves to the forever questions, you know. And with beginners, it's really a dream, because, you know, we really learn. And I have a very nice feedback about this. I have 2, well, they are siblings and they learn together and they hate grammar. And we change the words. We don't say grammar anymore. And one of them said that if we speak about these questions and we set goals, it doesn't seem that we are really learning something. And they were so happy with, and they have excellent results at school, in any situations. They are brilliant. So I can't be more grateful for this system, Rachel. Thank you.
But you're the one that's doing it. So yes, well done. Well done. Thank you for that feedback.
Thank you.
So hopefully one day we're going to get this into all the schools as well across the world. Now, one of the major differences, everybody, is signposting, not eliciting. What do I mean there? You know, in a lot of the language teacher trainings that we go through, there is great emphasis on this asking questions to get your learner to feel and intuitively come into where you want them to go. We are going to stop doing that. And the reason for that is because it can make people go limbic. It can make people get nervous. If I'm just asking you questions and you don't know where I'm going and you're not understanding, you're going to shut down. So what we do is we're constantly signposting. And I'm going to talk about signposting in a minute. Signposting is key in everything that we do. Secondly, we're going to stop explaining it to them. You know, the normal pattern as a language teacher is Today we're going to talk about present perfect, and present perfect is da 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 da, and we explain it and we explain it and we explain it. Ollie, I can see you're really enjoying my explanation there. So we're going to stop explaining. The first thing we're going to do, now we're going to talk about present perfect. What do you know about it? Tell me what you know first, so that I know where you're scaffolding from. Because if I just explain it, you're going to get bored if you know it. So I need to know. So we're asking, not explaining. And we're not giving in. You know, as soon as they say, oh, I don't know, don't give in. What do you think? Ping pong back to them. Provoke. Get them thinking. Don't give in with, oh, I don't know. And stimulate curiosity. Dopamine means more connections per second. The more production of dopamine, the more connections per second. And we're involving them. Coaching is about interaction. No more long explanations. Interaction. Constant interaction. And it becomes relaxing, fun, engaging, relaxed atmosphere. Most important, they feel they can ask you anything. We never, never want them to feel silly, stupid, bad, unable to learn. From my perspective, honestly, everybody can learn. The point is how I can help you to come into this information. And by the way, these principles that I'm going to show you now, you can use them for non-grammar as well. So this is the model. Hacked PQC, it's a coaching model. What's a coaching model? A coaching model is a pathway through a conversation. In coaching, professional coaching, you may have heard of the GROW model. It's very famous, GROW. And again, it's that pathway through what are your goals, what's the reality, what are the obstacles, what's the way forward. This is my model that you can use to help them go through the grammar and the non-grammar. So let's have a look at each part of the model. So placement is what I would say is the synonym for signposting. Now we're going to do this. Okay, we've just done that. Now we're moving on. Okay, we've just finished this. Now we're moving to the next bit. Every step of the way, you announce it, and you announce it like you're giving a presentation. Now, this is very important because what it does, it brings their brain with you every step of the way. And when you're doing this without the books, when you're doing this as a pure coaching conversation, your signposting is necessary because if not, you're going to lose them. Okay, so we're coming into the present perfect and we're going to look at the formation first. We're going to break the formation down into the affirmative, question, and then the negative form. So, moving to the affirmative form first. Super. We're going to close that part. Now we're going to move into how we create the question. Okay. So far, we've got the affirmative and the question. Now, let's look at the negative formation. So every step of the way. This is challenging for teachers because we're not used to doing this. This is a new habit that you have to install because we're used to just firing out questions. Signposting and placement is not a question, it's a statement. After that, you can ask your questions. This will make sure that you don't go into that elicit mode. Signpost. It brings certainty, safety, psychological safety. No surprises along the way. They know exactly where you're going because you're telling them. After that, we're going into asking them the question. And this beautiful, beautiful quote here from James Zull. James Zull is a cognitive neuroscientist. Do have a look at his books. They're really, really good. One is called From Brain to Mind. I've got it on the shelf over there. And this is the other one, The Art of Changing the Brain. And he used to be a university lecturer. And this quote is actually when he realized that his lecturing wasn't effective, because we need them to put it in their words. We need them to interpret it. We need them to give their explanations, not me just explaining it all the time. They need to give it back and interpret it. So this is where we need to ask them first, what do you know? So you've got signpost and then assessment. What do you know about present perfect? What do you know about the formation of the affirmative? If you know it, brilliant. We don't need to waste time. We can move on. If you don't know it, let's come into it. This is where you find out with the scaffolding. Every single learner will have a different point of entry. Every single learner will have a different point of entry. You need to find out what it is. Now, as we said, you know, when you're doing this, you're really finding out the incomplete networks and the gaps. And you're finding out if there's no networks and you have to create new ones. If they know it, you can then push them into conversations, examples. Let's use the present perfect a moment. How about we go into a mini conversation? What have you done this morning? What have you had for breakfast? And you get them into conversation. Now, if they don't know it, you get them into teach or transfer knowledge. Now, I often use the native language as a springboard here. If you don't know something, I'm going to introduce it with lots of permission, very gentle, and I'm going to give you a little bit first. And then I'm going to ask if we can talk about it, interact. I'm going to give you examples and get you to give me examples. So just imagine you are my group, and this is the first time we're coming into the present perfect. And obviously, if you're coming into present perfect, you've got quite a bit of language behind you. You've probably done the past simple already. So, everybody, may I share with you, we're moving into a new tense in the past today. And this tense is called present perfect. And what we're going to do first, we're going to look at the formation in the affirmative, then we'll look at the question form, and we'll see how we can get those going a little bit. So moving into the way that we form the affirmative, can I share with you that we actually use the verb to have? You know this verb. We've done it many, many times before. We use it like a helper verb. So I have, and if I take the regular verbs, it's exactly the same ending as the past simple. I have worked. I have lived. How about I give you a couple of verbs and you try it? For example, dance. What would we say there? And I'd get you doing it instantly. And then I'd ask you, what other verbs can you think of that are regular that you could give me back? Okay, now let's have a look at you. You have danced. How would you do it with other verbs? Now let's have a look at he, she, it, because now this is going to change. And we've done this before. May I ask you for some examples? So you've got this instant interaction. That's the key. And you're step by step building them up into the new topic. By the way, I normally compartmentalize the uses of the present perfect into 6 compartments, as Orshi well knows. And those 6 compartments are when we use present perfect, full stop. And once they've got that, they've got it. So T, for me, actually goes into being a transfer of knowledge. But it really is with this constant interaction. Now, peppered through this process, you've got coaching questions, powerful questions. You've got the ones which are about feeling. How do you feel? What do you need at this point? How can I help? So the classic coaching questions. And you've also got the powerful native target. How is this in your language? How would you say this in your language? How is it different? How is it similar? Does it exist? If it doesn't, then how do you say this? Let's just analyze. What would you say in this? Because obviously you do say, I have had breakfast this morning. So what tense do you use? And how do you make me understand that it's recent? And I get them thinking the examples of how they would do it. And then they have this sort of, okay, well, I would say it like this in my language, but obviously in English, I need to say it like this. All the time, you're helping the brain to pattern, compartmentalize, categorize, scaffold. Again, I come back to saying this is where you are the provocateur par excellence. Finally, oh, by the way, this is the research that we had before from 2016, where we saw that the brain goes to the native grammar areas first. This is what we said earlier in the other slide. And finally, you've got the clarification questions. Am I hearing this? Is this what you're saying? Can I just check? Do you mean this? And that's the model. Now, the most important thing to understand is that this model is not linear. You're not always PACT, PQC, PACT, PQC. No, you're dancing in and out according to your learner. Every conversation will be different. P, A, PQ, T, P, A, C, P, A, C. Clarification, P, powerful question, P, A, powerful question. You're going to dance with the learner. No two grammar conversations will ever be the same again, because you are fully dancing with that learner in front of you. Or group of learners. We've even got people doing this with groups. Now that's step 2. You know, we said there are 2 steps. Step 2 is the conversation where you're building the grammar up. Step 1 is where you're breaking down the grammar. Now, this part is essential for you, because this part actually is where you create your script. If you want to go into a session and control that conversation and know exactly A to B, where am I going, you need a little bit of a script in the background. Now, this script is not for the learner. With the learner, you create it with materials or with a mind map or with a visual or tables or whatever they want. But you need to know, where am I going in this conversation? Because otherwise you're going to go where I went 20 years ago, over here, over there, over here. And every time they take you somewhere, you're going to get lost. Now, the power of this conversation is, if they take me on a tangent, I say, oh, that's an interesting question. Maybe we come back to that another time. I'll make a note, but can I just bring you back to where we are now? Because this is where the focus is. And if we go down there, we're going to lose that focus. So I bring them back in. And as a coach, you are managing those conversations. That's the skill of a coach. Now, I've done a little bit of a script for conditionals. This script is for me. In English, we say a cheat sheet. You know, when you go into an exam and you've got a little bit of a cheat sheet, you shouldn't, but you know what I mean. In Spanish, it's called a chuleta. I don't know why it's called a chuleta in Spanish, which is like a pork chop. I don't like taking pork chops into an exam, but anyway. So you take in your little script. Now I've got this in my brain because I've done it so many times. And believe me, once you create these and you've got them in your brain, you will sit in a session and just do it. So for me, if my learner wants conditionals, imagine I've got an advanced learner with conditionals all over the place. I would start off the conversation with, okay, we're going to look a little bit. Firstly, let's have a look at the structure of those sentences. How do those sentences go? Okay, so we've got if, da, 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 then, da, da, da. And then we've got it the other way as well. Then, da, 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 if, da, da, da. So this is the structure. From there, I would then go into, okay, what types of conditionals do we have? Let's just name them all. And there we would be listing out 0, 1, 2, 3, mixed. Then I would take my learner into each and every one of them, step by step. Okay, how about we start off with the 0 then first? And we're going to look at the formation, the use, and anything else that we need to address. And literally we would do that. Now I would follow the same pattern with first, formation, use, anything else we need to address. Second, formation, use, anything else we need to address. Third, formation, use, anything else we need to address. Notice I'm getting them into patterns. So the conversation, I'm helping them to pattern each one. Formation, use, additional. Remember, I'm with an advanced learner. If I was with a beginner, I would probably just come into the 0 conditional and that's it. By the way, 0 conditional, I would imagine for all of you in your languages is exactly the same as in English. If plus present, then present. Present tenses. Is it the same for all of you? You could get a beginner doing present tenses, doing 0 conditionals. Why not? So according to the level of the learner, I will do more or less of my script. The most important thing is that my script is in order and I know where I'm going. That's the most important thing. With that script, then I'm going to use my packed PQC as the conversation. Just to share with you, this is the commercial break. Commercial break with no music. In the book, Brain Friendly Grammar, you have ready-made breakdowns. So with all of the grammar, tenses, etc., you've got ready-made breakdowns, gerund, present participle, passive, etc. You've got everything in there. So if you're interested just to have those breakdowns with pleasure, you've got them there. I do encourage you that you can do this by yourselves. It took me years, by the way, but you can do it by yourselves. Okay, so the breakdown of anything. Can I just say as well, you know, when you do these breakdowns, you can do them for any language. You just take the same principle of breaking down and you can do it with any language. Can I just say, when you do the breakdown, you need to understand that what you want to do is create a big picture of that topic. All of our grammar books, and I put up my hand and say Murphy is my Bible. I love Murphy. I've loved Murphy all of my teaching life since, and even when I was 17, there was this basic grammar in use book back in the 1980s that I loved. I love the grammar books, but the one problem is that they are disjointed. They don't give you the big picture of the topics. If I say to you, the present, you're sitting there going, what's in this topic? If you've got it on one page, A to B, this is the present, this is everything in the present, it gives you certainty. When you have certainty, you can bring that certainty to your learners. If you're sitting there going, oh my God, prepositions, oh my God, there's so many prepositions, how on earth? We don't have it organized in our brains. If you can have, okay, I'm going to start here and do da, 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 and then we're going there, if you can find your pathway through that prepositions, then you are able to bring them certainty with it. So for me, this is an essential step for every language educator. And especially with topics like modals, conditionals, present perfect, phrasal verbs. You can do this with phrasal verbs. Now, I know it's nearly 10 to 12. My apologies that it's gone on for so long. Hopefully you're all still engaged. Would anybody like me to do a quick demo? Okay. Shall we do a quick demo with the PAC PQC? Obviously, I'm using the PAC PQC and the conditionals. But then I do need a learner. Agatha, would you like to be my learner?
Always. I am.
Love it, love it, love it. Right, so Agatha, we've got, obviously, I know that you're an advanced learner, so you're an advanced speaker, but we're really going to dive in a little bit into the conditionals, because this is the area of grammar that you said to me that you wanted to sort of get more solid and come into. So how do you feel if we come into this we're just going to do 10 minutes as a demo for all of these people. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, super. And just to warm us up, if we think about conditionals in daily life, what comes up for you when you think about how you use them every day?
I guess when I want to, when I use them every day, I would say situation at work, talking to my boss about workload, and when he wants me to work weekends or from home, and there are these conditions that are created in these situations, for example.
Yes, 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 yes. So the conditions, the bargaining, if this, then this. Right, okay. Now, we're going to move into just talking through the basic structure of that if sentence. So how would a sort of normal if sentence go if you give it a structure?
Right. For instance, if I give you 2 extra days off at the end of the month, will you work from home, I don't know, 2 extra hours per week or 3 extra hours per
Brilliant.
week? Like
Yes,
that.
brilliant. So you've got an if and a then. And may I say that we can also do, will you work da 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 if da da da? You could do then and if. Yes, so we've got both ways. Right, now we're going to move into the different types of conditionals. And what I'd like to do is really take each type step by step just to make sure you're solid. Because when we go into this conversation, what we're also looking for is where you've got the grammar pain. Okay, so when we look at the types, we've got the zero conditional first. What can you tell me about this one?
So for instance, I love coffee and I can drink coffee at any time of day. So then if I drink coffee at night, so if I drink at night, I can't sleep. Or I have a hard time falling asleep.
Yeah, Excellent example. Right. So if we look first at the formation and then we look at the use, coming into the formation of what you've told me, how have you formed those two different sides, the if and the then, with the tenses?
With what situation? Sorry, I got lost there.
My apologies. So, beautiful example that you gave me. If we look at the formation of that example, what tenses did you use on both sides?
The present.
Right.
About the coffee.
Yeah, right. So how is that in your native language?
So my native language is Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, and it's the same present also, both sides.
Fantastic. So we've got a direct correspondence. Yes. If present, then present. Great. Now, looking at the uses of this, when would we use a zero conditional?
Whenever you want to express a certain result. Like if you do this thing happens, right?
Right, right. Could we call it a fact, a truth? Yes, yeah. And often we have this feeling of scientific facts. If water reaches 100 degrees, it boils. Yes, yes, brilliant. How do you feel about the formation and the use?
Good, thank you.
Okay. There's one thing I'd just like to bring in as an additional question here. Because actually in English, may I share with you that I could also say, when water reaches 100 degrees, it boils. How is that in Brazilian Portuguese?
Also the same, present.
So, quando.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, quando a água atinge, yeah, present, it boils, ferve, yeah, it's all
Right.
present, yes.
Right. So, in fact, we could use when or if.
Yes.
So, what would be the difference in feeling for you if I said if da 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 or when da da da?
Yeah, no different, no problems with that difference.
No, but
Say
well, let me check in with your native language then. If I said if water boils,
yes.
sim agua ja ja ja.
Yeah. If the water,
Quando. What's the difference in feeling for you in your native language?
So the if would be the condition, really, but when would be just describing a happening, not really. Uh-oh, where are you? Oh, I see you. Sorry.
I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Can I share that the when makes it more concrete?
Right.
How do you feel about that?
Good. That sounds really
When this happens, this definitely happens.
Yes.
Makes it a little bit more concrete than if this happens, then this happens.
Definitely.
Makes it
Okay,
a little
Portuguese
more
too.
feeling
Yes.
of, yes.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
Yes. Good.
Great, great. Now we're moving on from the zero and we're moving now to the first. And everybody, I'm going to stop there because of the time, but then we would go through formation, use. How do you feel with that? Then we'd move to the second. So literally we've got this pitter patter, pitter patter. Agatha and I could be here all day.
I know I could.
I could too.
I wish I could come over for a coffee at your place, Rachel.
Me too. No. Let me come to you, please.
May I say, I love the way you do this, and I really want to do more of that, of the checking with the client as you do with the learner. Like, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? So this is a very good reminder for me as a coach. Thank you so much. I tend to have a hard time with the eliciting and signposting and all that. So these sessions are so powerful as a reminder of that as well. So because I guess we were all teachers before being coaches, so there's that constant struggle kind of. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. We know that breaking a habit is impossible. We know that you have to create new and do it and do it and do it to consolidate the new before the old starts falling away. So Agatha, thank you. Lonnie, yes. Lonnie. Oh, I think Lonnie's frozen. He's in Sweden, so I think it must be the ice in Sweden. Lonnie! Okay, let me just move on. Let me move into any questions or comments at this point. Until we get Lonnie back. Okay, so we've done a little bit of a demo. Honestly, when you start with learners like this, it just becomes such a relaxed conversation and a flow between each, and you're finding out where's your pain, how can I help, what do you need, how can I get you solid here. It really does take the heat off grammar. Now, I just want to finalize today just with a little bit of a sort of an explanation. This is who we are. We are, the company name is Efficient Language Coaching. We are now really coming into different parts of the company. So we've got the Academy, which is dealing with all the accredited coaching, educational language coaching training. Then we've got the NeuroHeart Education Foundation, which is our new baby non-profit. And then we've got Efficient Language Coaching, which is our corporate for corporates and private coaching. Now, the Academy is actually a little bit of a play on words with Efficient Language Coaching because it's ELC in the middle, which is Educational Language Coaching or Efficient Language Coaching. And there we have our first step in language coaching certification. We were one of the first in 2013 to offer this. So we've got lots of years of experience of this now. We have the ICF credits plus the credits from the UK Standards Board as well. And once you've done that first step, you become a fully fledged, certified and accredited language coach, neurolanguage coach. And if you want to go further, there are further steps. So you can really come into making it a career if that's what you would like. On the other side, we have the educational coach course, which is for all teachers now. So the language coaching accreditation is for language specifically. And this course is for physics, biology, chemistry, maths teachers. Hopefully we get loads of maths teachers on earth to come to do this. Alessandro, you're a maths teacher. You need to get them all together and get them into this course.
I'm not really a teacher, but yes, I studied mathematics, and I know that the way how we learned at school, it's the reason why people hate mathematics.
Yes, absolutely. So we need to get maths teachers coming into this sexy way of doing it, definitely. And then we have the foundation. Now, the foundation, we really are looking to bring 3 different pillars of courses into the world. The first one is to enhance teaching and learning through coaching and neuroscience. Also, positive psychology. In the foundation, we offer courses from other third parties, other professionals. We've got dyslexia awareness for teachers. We've also got inclusion awareness for teachers. We've got positive psychology for teachers. Second pillar is about teacher well-being. Third pillar is about learner well-being. And we're bringing this through the nonprofit across the world. So that's starting to move now. It's really our baby foundation that's just starting to take baby steps in the world. And finally, we have Efficient Language Coaching, where we do offer corporate language coaching, which our neurolanguage coaches are being asked to do. And this is developing more and more. So we are getting requests through. We've also got the Neurolanguage Coach Network, where all of our coaches are, and they are being contacted through the network by people who are wanting their service. So if you are one of our coaches, do make sure your profiles are up to date. The other day, one coach had a request through there. So, you know, it really does happen a lot.